In the 3rd century CE, the Roman Empire stood on the brink of ruin, a colossus battered by forces it could no longer contain. The golden age of Augustus, when peace reigned, borders expanded, and the legions marched unchallenged, had faded into a distant memory. Now, chaos ruled. Barbarian tribes poured across the frontiers, their axes and spears striking deeper each year. The Sassanid Persians, fierce successors to the Parthians, gnawed at the eastern provinces with relentless ambition. Within, the empire bled from its own wounds. Rebellions flare, ambitious generals crowned themselves emperors, and the treasury dwindled under the weight of corruption and endless war. The Pax Romana, that fragile dream of prosperity, lay shattered. Nowhere was this decline more evident than in Rome's military, the iron backbone that had once held the empire together. The legions, legendary for their discipline and might, had grown brittle with age. At the Battle of Abritus in 51 CE, a Gothic horror annihilated a Roman army, slaying Emperor Decius in the mud of humiliation unthinkable in earlier days. A decade later, at Edessa, the Sassanids crushed another force, capturing Emperor Valerian alive, a disgrace that echoed across the Mediterranean. These defeats laid bare a harsh truth. The army, once the terror of the known world, was no longer fit for the challenges it faced. Its tactics were outdated, its morale broken, its ranks depleted by plague and desertion. Radical change was not just needed, it was the only path to survival. Yet Rome, for all its wounds, refused to die. From the ashes of this crisis of the 3rd century, a trio of emperors, Gallienus, Diocletian, and Constantine, rose to reforge the empire's sword. They did not merely patch a crumbling system. They reimagined it, crafting a military that was leaner, more versatile, and capable of facing threats both foreign and domestic. Their reforms, born of desperation and genius, would not only save Rome but plant seeds that would sprout across centuries, from the Byzantine East to the knightly orders of medieval Europe, and into the drill fields of modern armies. The roots of this crisis stretched beyond the battlefield. Since Augustus, Rome had thrived under a single emperor, a godlike figure whose will bound a vast dominion. For nearly 3 centuries, this worked, flawed, yes, but effective. The empire swelled, its roads and aqueducts stitching together a realm from Britain's misty hills to the sands of North Africa, from the Rhine's cold waters to Mesopotamia's dusty plains. But as Rome grew, so did the strain on its ruler. No one man, however brilliant, could govern such a sprawl, defend its endless borders, and quell its restless provinces. The cracks began to show. Emperors experimented with solutions. Some shared power with trusted allies, splitting duties to manage the chaos. Others faced rivals who seized control of distant regions, born of necessity or treachery. During the Pax Romana, this shared rule was practical, a matter of convenience. By the 3rd century, it was a desperate lifeline. At times, 3, 4, even more emperors reigned simultaneously, each clutching a fragment of the empire, their legions clashing in civil wars that tore Rome apart. The army, meant to shield the state, became a tool of ambition. Soldiers marched not just against Goths or Persians, but against each other. Recruitment faltered, training grew lax, and the discipline that had defined the legionary eroded into dust. Into this maelstrom stepped Gallienus, a man too often forgotten by history. From 253 to 268 CE, he ruled an empire unraveling at the seams. Plagues ravaged the population, thinning the ranks of both citizens and soldiers. Barbarian raids pierced Italy's heart, a violation unseen since Hannibal's day. The empire split. Gaul and the west broke away under the Gallic Empire, while the east fell to Palmyra's Queen Zenobia. Yet Gallienus endured, and more than that, he acted. He saw the legion's weakness and built something new. The comitatenses, a mobile cavalry reserve stationed at strategic points, ready to gallop to any breach. Before this, cavalry had been secondary, a supplement to the infantry's might. Gallienus made it central, a swift dagger to counter the empire's sprawling threats. He went further, shaking the foundations of Rome's elite. Command had long been a privilege of the senatorial class, men of wealth and lineage who often knew more of politics than war. Gallienus barred them from the army, turning instead to equestrians and battle-hardened officers, men who'd earned their scars, not their titles. This shift toward meritocracy was revolutionary, a quiet rebellion against tradition that strengthened the military's core. His reign ended in assassination, his legacy overshadowed by brighter names, but Gallienus was the spark, the unsung architect of Rome's resurgence. In 284 CE, Diocletian took the throne, a soldier emperor with a mind for order. He gazed at Rome's fractured map and saw what Gallienus had not. One ruler could no longer suffice. He devised the Tetrarchy to senior emperors, the Augusti, and to juniors, the Caesars, dividing the empire into 4 zones, each with its own master. This was no mere delegation, it was a restructuring of power itself, a bold gambit to hold Rome together. The military felt this change most keenly. Diocletian swelled the army's ranks, nearly doubling its size, and split it into 2 forces, the limitanei, border troops tasked with guarding the frontiers, and the comitatenses, mobile field armies posed inland to strike at larger foes. This dual system was a stroke of brilliance, a layered defense that balanced resilience with flexibility. Diocletian's reforms rippled outward. He standardized ranks and pay, rooting out corruption that had bled the legions dry. He built training centers to sharpen war recruits into soldiers worthy of Rome's name. He reorganized provincial commands, ensuring loyalty and efficiency where chaos had reigned. His vision touched every corner of Roman life: taxes, economy, administration, but the military was his triumph. Where Gallienus had innovated, Diocletian organized, turning a battered force into a machine of precision and purpose. Then came Constantine, the warrior emperor whose name would echo through history. Rising through civil war and crowned by victory, he inherited the reforms of his predecessors and made them his own. He expanded the comitatenses and limitanei, refining Diocletian's framework. He disbanded the Praetorian Guard, once Rome's protectors, now a nest of treachery, and replaced them with the Sculi Paladinae, elite troops loyal only to him. Most striking was his embrace of cavalry. Building on Gallienus's foundation, he unleashed the cataphracts, heavily armored horsemen whose charges shatter enemy lines, harbingers of the knights who would one day dominate Europe's fields. These were no mere riders, they were a thunderbolt, a fusion of Roman discipline and raw power. Constantine's reforms went deeper. He founded military academies, improved soldiers' lives with land grants and legal rights, and drew recruits from across the empire's diverse peoples. His reign saw Rome's Christianization, a shift that wove faith into the army's fabric. Soldiers now marched beneath the Chiro, their morale bolstered by a sense of divine favor. By his death, the Roman military was unrecognizable from its early days, no longer a static, infantry-heavy relic, but a dynamic, multi-layered force, ready to weather the storms still to come. When the Western Empire collapsed in 476 CE, Europe plunged into shadow. Central authority dissolved, roads crumbled, and kingdoms rose from the ruins. Yet Rome's spirit did not perish. It fled east to Constantinople, where the Byzantine Empire, Romaeon to its people, endured for a millennium. There, the legion's heirs lived on in the Tagmata, elite units that carried the centurion's discipline into a new age. Officers drilled their men with Roman rigor, led from the front, and held small units together in battle. Generals like Belisarius, under Justinian, reclaimed lost lands: North Africa, Italy, with armies that blended Roman tradition with mercenary might, their commanders echoing the centurion's blend of grit and guile. Cavalry ruled Byzantine warfare, the cataphracts a gleaming evolution of Constantine's vision. Clad in armor, they charged with devastating force, their leaders balancing tactics with the mundane, training riders, maintaining gear, upholding morale. Ceremonies and badges marked their rank, and nod to Rome's love of order and honor. Though the centurion's title faded, his essence thrived, cloaked in Greek and gilded by faith. In the West, a different path unfolded. Feudalism birthed a knight mounted, armored, sworn to allure. At first glance, they seemed a far cry from centurions, born of privilege rather than merit. But as centuries passed, parallels emerged. Knightly orders like the Templars, forged in the Crusades, adopted rigid hierarchies, intense training, and codes of conduct that mirrored Rome's ideals. They led charges, disciplined their men, and stood as beacons of martial virtue. Centurions of Christendom, their crosses a distant kin to the Vinewood staff. Tournaments and heraldic rites formalized their world, echoing the legion's structured pride. By the Renaissance, Rome was a memory, but one that burned bright. Thinkers like Machiavelli pored over its texts, urging a return to its disciplined ways. His art of war praised citizen armies, led by officers of Roman stripe, practical, tough, unyielding. The Spanish Tercio, with its pikemen and musketeers, revived manipulative tactics, its commanders enforcing order with a centurion's iron will. Rome's lessons were no longer relics, they were blueprints. The early modern era brought gunpowder and empire, yet the centurion's shadow grew longer. Professional armies rose, demanding the cohesion Rome had perfected. In Prussia, Frederick the Great's sergeants drilled soldiers into a relentless machine, marching, firing, charging as one. Napoleon's officers led from the front, their bravery turning battles into legends. British redcoats, guided by cane-wielding sergeants, held lines from India to Waterloo, their discipline a scarlet echo of legionary might. These leaders, armed with autonomy and resolve, carried Rome's torch through smoke-canned steel. Today, the centurion wears no plume, but he lives in every sergeant, every non-commissioned officer who trains, leads, and fights beside their troops. Modern militaries, US, Marines, British SAS, NATO forces rely on their grit. Their drills a direct descendant of Roman practice. From boot camps to battlefields, they lead from the front, adapt on the fly, and forge recruits into warriors. Films like Gladiator and texts at West Point keep the centurion's image alive, a symbol of duty and order in chaos. Rome fell, its empire dust, yet as long as soldiers march, as long as leaders rise to train and inspire, the centurion endures not in name, but in spirit. His tools have changed, sword to rifle, staff to radio, but his essence remains. Discipline, courage, leadership. From legionary camps to modern barracks, he stands as Rome's immortal gift to the art of war.